The B&O Railroad west of Indianapolis ran all the way to Decatur, Illinois, and the segment from Decatur all the way to Hillsdale, which links on to the CSX main line from Chicago to Evansville, this is still in service. In fact, it actually has welded rail. So from Indianapolis all the way to Hillsdale is what eventually got abandoned and removed. So people that lived close to the B&O Railroad, they believe that 1988 was the last year that a train ran through the abandoned segments of the old B&O. The line from Indianapolis to Rochdale had been upgraded to 40 miles an hour in 1982. After Seaboard merged in '87, the corporate office decided it would be cheaper and wiser to negotiate trackage rights over the old P&E, which runs from Indianapolis to Crawfordsville, and then from Crawfordsville they could just go south on the old Monon and link on to the segments of the old B&O. So Russellville to Bloomingdale was abandoned in 1988. It was 14.5 miles. And then Rochdale to Russellville was abandoned in 1990. It was 9.6 miles. And then somewhere in Indianapolis, there was 3.2 miles that was abandoned in 1992. And then Bloomingdale to Montezuma was abandoned. 7 miles was abandoned in 1994. So you can see this line was not abandoned all at one time. It was just slowly carved up over a 10 to 12 year time frame. Now this person makes one of the best comments about the B&O segment from Indianapolis to Decatur. He says, even if this line had survived the creation of CSX, it most likely would not have lasted after the Conrail merger. Only hope would have been if Southern had have merged with the Monon way back when. Now I would definitely have to agree with that guy's comment. From my understanding, from Indianapolis all the way to Hillsdale and beyond, there's only like one profiting business, and that is in Rochdale. And it's just a large grain elevator. So I would say this line had no chance. I think if there could have been other businesses that sprung up along this segment, this line would have survived. So if you were to drive through Rochdale today, this is what you would see. You would see the old abandoned roadbed of the B&O, and then you would see the length from the old Monon headed east towards Indianapolis, and we can see the large grain facility right over on the east side of Rochdale. So this is CSX today in Indiana, and as you can see, this B&O line would have had no chance of survival unless there were businesses that sprung up on this segment. Now here's an interesting fact. Let's say that it's the year 1980. We can see that there was actually 4 railroads that ran across the Wabash River in this short amount of distance. This is the NS main line up in Attica, which is active today. It gets like 30 freight trains a day. Over here it would have been the Conrail, or ex-P&E, which ran over at Covington, over the Wabash. And down by Cayuga was the Norfolk Southern ex-Nickel Plate, which at one time got quite a few freight trains per day. And down here by Hillsdale was the B&O. And it's sad to say, 20 years later, there would only be one railroad crossing over the Wabash River. Now there's no doubt, there's probably a handful of people that were very upset when this line got abandoned. They probably experienced what I experienced in Covington when Conrail tore up the old P&E from Crawfordsville to Covington. Now, other comments I read says that this track used to get 2 major freight trains a day, one going west and then one going east. But as you can see, there are superior lines that CSX could have easily just rerouted. So anyway, this is a farewell tribute to the old B&O west of Indianapolis to Decatur. And if you're a rail fan, I tell you a town to go visit. It's right here. It's called Tuscola, Illinois. And there are actually 3 major railroads that run through this small town. You've got the old B&O, which is a CSX. You've got Canadian National, which goes through Champaign. I think it might get, 20 freight trains a day or something. And then you've got the Union Pacific that runs up to Chicago. I think it gets like 25 freight trains a day. So this small town gets around 45 to 48 freight trains a day. Now here's a picture that this guy found on the internet. It's from 1992. It is the last train to go over the B&O segment up in Indianapolis. And about maybe 3.5 miles up in Indianapolis had welded rail. So people that lived close to this line got to witness new ties and welded rail being ripped up and demolished. This is a picture of a train crossing Eagle Creek up in Indianapolis in '92. They say it's the last train to ever go over. And this location, you can see this is the Indy 500 track. This is the old B&O, and this would be Eagle Creek. And you can see the trestle is long gone. Here is the old roadbed, and there is a concrete pier that still remains. So back in 1992, the last train came over this trestle, and they say this maybe 3 to 4 mile segment had new ties and welded rail. So when you look at a map of the old B&O Railroad before it merged, you can see that the tracks went all the way to Springfield, Illinois and beyond. But when you look at recent maps, it shows Norfolk and Western, so I don't really know what's going on between Decatur and Springfield. Now here's a very shocking and interesting article. As some of you don't know, CSX apparently no longer owns the B&O segment from Decatur to Indiana. They have sold it. And the new company is called Decatur and Eastern. So the article goes on to say the company has sold 126 miles of track running from Decatur into Indiana. So this map shows that Decatur all the way to Hillsdale, which is welded rail, and then down to Paris, and then into Terre Haute, and clear up into Georgetown. Now something that's cool about this map, you can see the old nickel plate right here, leading down into Charleston, and then connecting onto the Canadian National, which goes up into Champaign and to Chicago. Now I don't totally understand why CSX would sell this off. I mean, surely they were making millions of dollars a year off of businesses in Decatur, so I don't really know. I'll have to investigate more about why they would just sell it all off. Now, how many of you think that would be awesome if the Decatur and Eastern bought out the K&B and then worked out a deal with CSX to buy that old ran-down crappy track south of Danville and linked it all together? They would have like a small superpower short line. They would have access to Kankakee, to Lafayette, to Danville, to Terre Haute, to Decatur, to Harris, Illinois. I bet they could take a couple train cars away from CSX and NS if they had that much mileage of track. The article goes on to say the company is attempting to sell a total of 6 rail segments with 650 miles of track across the nation. Anyway, if you have any interesting stories or knowledge about the old B&O Railroad, just leave a comment under the video.